Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone, to today's Google Search Central SEO Office Hours Hangout. My name is John Mueller. I'm a search advocate at Google. And part of what we do are these office hour sessions where people can jump in and ask their questions around their website and web search. And maybe we have some answers. We'll see. A bunch of questions were submitted already on YouTube, which is always good. It makes it a little bit easier for me to kind of go through questions a little bit ahead of time. But there are also a couple of people are raising hands already. So maybe we'll just start off with some of the live folks here. Let's see. Akash, I think you're first.
Hi, John. Hi.
Hi.
So my question is regarding hreflang tags. So I have to target two countries, let's say UK and US, and both the pages are like duplicate of each other, like exactly same wordings because it's in English language. So should I create pages like EN US or EN UK, and then target because it will be localized for English with US or English with UK, since both the pages are exactly same? Or should I only create an EN page and then let it be for all the English users? But my geography are defined. It has to be only UK and US. So how should I go with this? Like,
How do you mean your geography is defined?
uh, because the client only wants like the pages should be only available in these two countries, not for any other English speaking countries. So it's been defined, but the pages are again like duplicate. So the content will be only be same. Like,
OK. So I think, first of all, probably you have to set expectations because you can't define that pages will not appear in the search results in other countries. So essentially, if they're in English, they can appear to any user who's searching in English. So that's kind of the first thing there. And the English US and the English UK versions, it basically just means it would swap out the URL for the appropriate version, depending on the country. So if you have different content for English US and English UK, even if that's something like a contact address or currencies or things like that, then that makes sense to have on separate URLs. If it's all the same content, if it's really just like a text article, then I would just make it one English version, because you can't limit it to those countries anyway. So you might as well make one version. And the advantage of having one version versus multiple English versions of the same thing is that you save yourself a lot of work in that you just have to maintain one version. And when it comes to search, it's a lot easier for us to rank that one page versus you taking the same content and putting it on multiple pages. So my recommendation there would be essentially make one English version of the content, and also kind of let the client know that you can't limit it to just those countries.
cool, right. So one more question.
Sure.
It's regarding the pagination. We had a talk like couple of weeks back, and I have asked which of the pagination method is right. Let's say page one, like all the rest of the other pages, page two, three, and four, are been canonicalized to the page one, or the home page, or that thing, or all those pages should be like self canonicalized. So during that time, so you said both the things work on the internet. We don't give a preference to the only rel next and rel preview. But if you do like canonicalize all the page two, page three to the page one, or self canonicalize those pages like two to two or three to three, it doesn't matter. Our bots or our systems like can easily recognize those changes. However, in the best e-commerce practices by Google, it's been clearly defined that the pagination sequence has to be like the self-canonicalized, I guess. And what we have opted for is like we have done like all the rest of the pages have been canonicalized to page the one. So is it still bad for us, or should I change to that the best practices sequence?
I think it's up to you, and it depends on your website. So what happens if you canonicalize everything to page one, then the content on pages 2, 3, and 4 will not be indexed. Like if we follow the canonical to kind of map everything to page one, then essentially everything on the other pages is ignored. If if that's OK with you, if you have enough cross-linking that you can still kind of make that content findable, then that's fine. If on page 2, 3, 4, and 5, you have things that are unique to those pages, then obviously you want to have those pages indexed.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sure. All right, Sergio.
Hey, John. Mine is rather simple question. I just wanted to know if there was any known issues the past few days regarding indexing. So I have a client site that we've been trying to index a few pages for like a couple of weeks now, and the inspect tool says everything is crawlable, indexable, everything is okay. It's been submitted by sitemaps. It also has some internal links, but still taking very, very long. So I don't know if there was anything there that maybe you knew, or if I can maybe just send via the chat one of the URLs just to see.
Yeah.
If that...
Maybe if you can drop them in the chat, then
Yep.
I can pick them up afterwards and
Okay, then I'll just drop those
cool.
URLs there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I have like a secret backdoor to indexing, but I'm happy to look at these kind of things because it's always, I don't know, it's easy for me to make like a hand-wavy answer of like, well, we just don't index everything. But sometimes it's also interesting to look at the details and see, well, what is actually happening here? Is this something we should be indexing, or is this kind of expected? Cool. OK, I'll copy those out and check those out afterwards.
Thank you.
All right, Denise.
Hello.
Hi.
So my question, I have a website which has, it's pretty bloated, and it's been hit really hard with the changes from the summer and onwards on the core web vitals, I think it was. So I'm now redesigning that website in AMP pages, and I'm converting all my images to WebP format. I don't know if it's wise, but I'm just a little concerned. I'm trying to use the same URLs. So I have two questions. The first is, with the images, they currently rank, but if I convert from the JPEG, excuse me, if I convert from JPEG to WebP, is that going to impact those rankings?
Potentially. So I think there. I mean, what I've seen is some people just use the same image extensions and make them WebP files. And if that works, then that would essentially save you the trouble, because then you just swap out the content but keep the same URLs, and all of that will continue to work. Whereas if you change the image URLs, or if you change the URLs of the landing pages for the images, then obviously for image search, that takes a little bit longer to pick up. But the thing to also keep in mind is that not all sites get significant traffic from image search. So sometimes it's something where theoretically it's a problem if you make these kind of changes and it takes time. But if from a practical point of view, you get, I don't know, maybe 5% of your traffic from image search, then maybe that's not your highest priority.
OK, I get substantially more from image search, so
OK.
I need to try to get this right. The next question then would be, am I wise in converting to AMP pages for everything, or is that a silly move at this point? I'm pretty fresh, shall we say. I'm not very good at this stuff, so
yeah. I think in general that's fine. AMP is a fairly fast framework. You can also make fast websites outside of AMP. So it's not something where I would say moving to AMP is a requirement if you want to make a fast website. Depending on the kind of things you have available, sometimes you can make really fast websites even with like a standard WordPress installation. So that's kind of one thing to keep in mind. The other thing is the page experience update is generally quite a subtle update. It's not something that would kind of, or shouldn't kind of make or break a website. So if you saw a significant drop in traffic from search, I would not assume that it's purely due to kind of you having a slower website.
OK.
So that's kind of the one thing there. I just want to kind of mention that ahead of time, because it's easy to sink a lot of time and money into making a faster website. And sometimes there are bigger problems on a website than just speed.
I think the right now the mobile experience isn't a good one. I think that's what's hitting me so hard. So when I use any of the tools like Lightning, for example, what I'm seeing is the page doesn't actually render. It's too slow.
Oh, OK. If it's even too slow to be tested, that seems like something to fix just from a user point of view. But again, I think from a search point of view, for most of these things, I would not assume that making a website from really slow to really fast would cause a significant rise in visibility. Like there will be some changes, but it's usually much more subtle.
OK. I had a 50% drop in like at the end of June, the beginning of July in traffic. So I know there was a big update then. I think it was Core Web Vitals at that point. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think we launched the page experience Core Web Vitals updates from June onwards, but I don't think you would see a 50% drop in traffic. That seems like
it has been slow. I mean, it's just gone down, 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 down. So yeah, but
that seems too extreme for just the speed and the page experience update. From my point of view, I would assume that there are other issues that are kind of stronger issues there.
OK. I'll dig deeper then.
OK.
Thank you.
Good luck. Hazel.
Hey, John. Good morning.
Hi.
So we have two questions about JavaScript. The first one is we're just wondering if we delete all JavaScript on page for Googlebot, not for users, will there be any crawling issue or maybe authority issue of our site? I think maybe we just fear that maybe Googlebot can crawl our page, like maybe simulate the user end, and so it will notice there may be no interactive functions. So will this be an issue, or this will be not an issue?
Probably not. So if JavaScript is not required for your pages, for the content and for the internal linking, then probably that doesn't change anything. I don't think it would significantly improve things from your side. So I would be cautious about just making that change. It's also tricky because once you kind of go down this route of making more, I don't know, simplified pages for Googlebot, it's very easy to fall into a situation where Googlebot sees something very different than what your users usually see. And that can make it very hard to diagnose issues. So if there's like some bug that's only affecting the Googlebot version of the site, you wouldn't see it if users always see a working website.
So, right now there are many functions like add to cart or buy it now, and also localization function like select language and select currency. These are all achieved by JavaScript. So we just in regards to response time, so we also want to reduce some loading time. So we just want to know if we can disable this JavaScript on page.
Probably you can. I mean, I don't know the details of your site, how it actually uses JavaScript, but you can disable JavaScript in your browser and try the website out. And then you kind of see what Googlebot would see there. The one thing maybe that you mentioned that I would watch out for is, I think in product search, we sometimes check to see what happens when you add something to your cart, just to kind of double check that the pricing and things like that are the same. And if you remove the add to cart functionality completely for crawlers, then maybe that affects kind of those checks that product search does. But I don't know the details of what exactly product search is looking for.
So Googlebot will not simulate the users to crawl page.
Yes. I mean, we try to render the page to see if there's something that we're missing, but we don't interact with the page because I think that would just take too much time to crawl the web if we had to click everywhere to see what actually happened.
Yeah, I see. Thank you. So for the second problem is also the JavaScript. So for our async models, we rendered it through the browser end. So we just wonder which one will be crawled easier by Googlebot. It's all the browser end, but the different forms. One is in the HTML and another is in the form of JSON.
I don't know. I would double check the testing tools in Search Console, just to see what gets picked up there. My suspicion is we would recognize both of them.
Right now, we have these both of them, and they both crawlable. But we just wanted to know which one may be easier to crawl. And yeah.
Probably, I mean, easier to crawl is probably the one in the HTML directly, but I will just use a testing tool to double check. And if you can make a test page with just maybe one of them turned off and one of them activated, you can see if it works or not.
So it's all the async models. Async models that maybe not the cynicals. So yeah. This okay, I got you. Thank you.
Okay. Gabi.
Yes, good morning.
Hi.
My name is Gabi from a Swiss platform. My question is concerning featured snippets in the context of different countries with the same language, in our case, especially Switzerland and Germany. So on our platform, we have kind of B2b pricing benchmarks for various products and services that show pricing, especially for Switzerland. What we found now is if the user is searching for example, what is the price for or what is the cost for a cashier system in Switzerland, we have no problem to appear in the featured snippets. But if the user in Switzerland is searching for what are the cost of a cashier system, and I mean, his context is in Switzerland, he is searching for Switzerland, but then we found that the featured snippets are always in euro and come from platforms in Germany that target the German market, but not the Swiss market. So my question is there something we can do from our side to take more influence, to be shown in this context of Switzerland, even that he does not type in Switzerland, but he is coming from Switzerland? Or why is Google showing the search results then, or this snippet previews from German countries?
Yeah. So in general, the featured snippet is, from our point of view, kind of a normal search result. So I wouldn't focus too much on whether it's shown in the featured snippet or not. But it's essentially a normal search result. And it has a little bit of a bigger snippet, a little bit more information there. But otherwise, it's a normal search result. And from our point of view, we try to do two things when it comes to searches. On the one hand, we try to recognize when a user wants to find something local. And when we recognize that the user wants to find something local, we'll use the geo-targeting information that we have from the websites to figure out which are likely the more local results that would be relevant for the user.
And with local, you mean the country? Because I'm talking about the whole country, which is, of course, a little bit small compared to Germany.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, and I think that local aspect is something that helps to promote local websites, but it doesn't mean that they will always replace anything that is global. So probably what we're seeing are these bigger websites from Germany I assume they're bigger websites. I don't know. Sometimes they're smaller too.
Mhm.
But these essentially global websites that we're seeing. And on the other hand, we have kind of the local results from the same country. And depending on how we understand the query, then we might show more local results, and we might show fewer local results. I mean, not fewer, but more, essentially more the global search results. And probably what is happening when someone is searching for in Switzerland, then of course we recognize, oh, they want something from Switzerland. And then we can really strongly promote the local results from Switzerland. But without that addition, sometimes it's hard for us to determine, is the local context really critical here or not?
Mhm.
And sometimes we'll just take global results in a case like that. That's not really something that you as a site owner can influence. It's more, this is what we've learned from users over, I don't know, billions of searches that they've done. And it can change over time, too, where if we recognize that, I don't know, users in Switzerland tend to go more to Swiss websites for this kind of query, then maybe we should kind of adjust our systems to learn that as well. But it's not something that you can force. The only thing you could do there is essentially use the feedback link on the bottom of the search results and say, oh, I was looking for something in Switzerland, and you showed me German stuff.
OK. Yeah, because we found that in about 50 to 60%, it's German results, even if there is services connected, and it's clearly products or services that you would not buy from Germany because you do not have the local support.
Yeah,
OK.
I
But I
don't know. I
see.
mean, sometimes
I
it's
understand.
yeah, I think it's super tricky sometimes, especially with Switzerland and Germany, because the language is the same. But it's also something where I think from a practical point of view, sometimes people just buy things in Germany because they're cheaper. And then you kind of have this skew of, well, I was looking for something. I don't care if it's from Germany and I don't have good support, but it's like cheaper. But I imagine you fight with that all the time.
Yeah, exactly. OK, thank you.
Cool. All right. Let me go to some of the submitted questions, and then we'll definitely have more time for you all as well. Let's see. Are there any situations where Google negates a site's authority that can't be recovered, even if the cause has been rectified? So assuming the cause was a short team turbulence with technical issues or content changes, how long for Google to reassess the website and fully restore authority, search position, and traffic? Does Google have a memory as such? So for technical things, I would say we pretty much have no memory, in the sense that if we can't crawl a website for a while, or if something goes missing for a while and it comes back, then we have that content again. We have that information again. We can show that again. That's something that pretty much picks up instantly again. And this is something that I think we have to have, because the internet is sometimes very flaky, and sometimes sites go offline for a week or even longer, and they come back, and there's like nothing has changed, but they fixed the servers. And we have to deal with that. And users are still looking for those websites. I think it's a lot trickier when it comes to things around quality in general, where assessing the overall quality and relevance of a website is not very easy. And it takes a lot of time for us to understand how a website fits in with regards to the rest of the internet. And that means, on the one hand, it takes a lot of time for us to recognize that maybe something is not as good as we thought it was. And similarly, it takes a lot of time for us to learn the opposite again. And that's something that can easily take, I don't know, a couple of months, a half a year, sometimes even longer than a half a year, for us to recognize significant changes in the site's overall quality. Because we essentially watch out for, well, how does this website fit in with the context of the overall web? And that just takes a lot of time. So that's something where I would say, compared to technical issues, it takes a lot longer for things to be refreshed in that regard. The other thing that I've very, very rarely seen is that a site gets stuck in some kind of a weird in-between state in our systems, in that, I don't know, at some point our algorithms reviewed the website and found it to be absolutely terrible. And for whatever reason, those part of the algorithms just took a very long time to be updated again. And sometimes that can be several years. And I don't know, this random person raising his hand, I will try to ignore him. But I mean, these are things that I've seen every now and then, but they're extremely rare. So the chances of any random website kind of falling into is fairly low. But it is something where if you struggle and you really see that you're doing a lot of things right and nothing seems to be working, then like do reach out to us and see if there's something on our side that might be stuck. But I would say, like, at least technical things, they resolve very quickly. Kind of the, I don't know, weird things stuck in the algorithms side, I would say that that's a lot rarer nowadays. But especially if something happened, I don't know, 5, 10 years ago, and your site is kind of stuck in a weird limbo state, then that's something where like reaching out and seeing if there's something weird is always worthwhile. Let's see. Alt text for lazy loaded images. Should the alt text be kind of appropriate for the image, essentially, if you have a placeholder image that is being lazy loaded? So what I would watch out for here is essentially when we render the page, we have to, or we try to lazy load the images as well, because we'll try to load the page in a very high viewport. And usually that triggers lazy loading. And usually that means we can pick up the alt text associated with the right images. If you have kind of the alt text already in place and the placeholder image is currently there and we just see that, then I don't think that's a problem per se. It's kind of like you're giving information about an image that you don't care about, but it's not that the rest of your site has kind of like a worse standing from that point of view. So I think that's kind of fine. The thing I would watch out for here more is that we can actually load the images that you're trying to lazy load here. So in particular, we don't watch out for things like the data source attribute. We essentially need to see the image URL in the appropriate source attribute for the image tag so that we can pick it up as an image. What would be an explanation for sudden drop in ranking from 1 out of the top 100 after years of perfect ranking for our brand name? Our brand name is the same as a biblical story. So we did compete with Wikipedia sometimes, and now we're just gone. We can still advertise, of course, so it isn't quite unfair. I don't know. It's hard to say without knowing the website. I don't know if you're here or if you can drop me a link. I'm happy to double check. I think the general tricky problem is if you have a brand that is essentially something that people commonly use for something else, then it makes it very hard for us to understand when someone is searching for that term, if they mean your website or if they mean the other thing. And if we can recognize that people mean something very specific with that term, then we'll try to show that very visibly in the search results, which also means if we can recognize that people are searching for this biblical story with that name, then we'll try to focus on that biblical story. And if there's also a website that is kind of like unrelated to that biblical story, then it can be quite hit and miss whether we actually start showing that website. This is something where with biblical stories, it's, I don't know, probably depends a bit on what exactly you're seeing there. But I see this very often where people will take essentially the keywords that they're trying to rank for and say, this is my brand. Like Best Car Insurance is my company name now. And just because your company is called Best Car Insurance doesn't mean we will show your website as #1 for someone searching for best car insurance. Because usually we can tell that, well, people have in the past at least used this term to search for something different. And just because your website is called that doesn't mean it will rank #1 for that term. Let's see. Google updates more than 10 times a day. During the core update period, do you carry out the same updates as on regular days? If the changes in the core updates are subtle, it's indistinguishable from regular updates. I don't think we hold back on normal updates during kind of this core update time, or like when we roll it out. The core updates usually take, I don't know, a week or so to be rolled out. So I imagine like the rollout now will probably be complete soon. And the normal updates, we tend not to hold them back during that time because we make lots of updates over the course of time. The things we would hold back a little bit are maybe other bigger updates that we want to let people know about. So essentially, if we have, I don't know, some bigger update involving structured data that we want to talk about, then probably we'll try to hold that back a little bit so that it's not like one update after another, but more kind of like we can talk about the update a little bit clearer and make it a little bit easier for people to understand what exactly is changing. But the kind of the normal updates that we do all the time, like, I don't know, shifting the UI slightly by a couple pixels, changing colors, or things like that, those are all updates that we can do independently. Let's see. In Google Analytics, our organic traffic, sometimes a huge amount of traffic starts dropping into the direct channel. What could be the reasons behind this? So on the one hand, I don't know that much about Google Analytics, so I can't give you detailed information on what specifically is happening there. But one of the things that could be playing a role is Google Discover. In particular, Google Discover, I think, is mostly seen as direct traffic in Google Analytics. And Google Discover is sometimes very binary in the sense that it's either you get a lot of traffic or you don't get a lot of traffic from Google Discover. So that could be something where if you're just looking at analytics, you might see those spikes kind of happening there. In Search Console, there's a separate report for Google Discover. So you could double check in Search Console and see, is there something happening with Google Discover or not? There's a blog on an e-commerce website of our clients. And for some reason, one particular article just won't get indexed. Yeah, I don't know. In general, we don't index everything on the web. So that's kind of like the standard situation there. It's something where maybe we're just not indexing this. If it's something where you see that everything else tends to get indexed from that part of the website. So for example, if you have 10 blog posts and just one of them in between just randomly doesn't get indexed, I would suspect that maybe there was some technical issue at some point that just takes a bit of time to be resolved. But it's also just very hard to tell. Like in general, we don't guarantee indexing. And even for a smaller website or a section of a larger website, it can happen that we just don't index everything. But if you want, I don't know if you're here in the Hangout, but if you want to drop me a URL to look at, I'm happy to take a look and see if there's something, I don't know, weird happening on our side there that maybe we can help with. I have a question about shop ratings. So schema.org, organization, aggregate, markup. Are they still relevant for Google search results? It seems to me that the overall organization rankings are not really in use. So as a regular retail shop, which ratings should you prefer, product ratings or shop ratings? Would you show shop ratings on category pages? Good question. So I double-checked just to make sure I get this right in our documentation. In particular, when it comes to shop ratings, we would not try to show them if they're on the shop themselves. So essentially, for local businesses, the idea is that if you have a kind of like a directory of local businesses, then putting ratings on those local businesses will be fine. And that's something we might show in search. But if you're the local business yourself, then putting a rating on your own website is not really kind of like an objective rating, right? It's like, I am 5 stars out of 5 or 4.5 out of 5 to make it look a little bit more legitimate. But like, that's not really something that we can trust and show in the search results. So from that point of view, if you're an e-commerce shop, then I would use product ratings, because the individual products can be reviewed either by yourself. You can clearly specify that as like something reviewed by yourself. Or you can use aggregate ratings, which would be from users, and show those there as well. So that's kind of what I would focus on there with an e-commerce site. On the other hand, if you're really a directory of other e-commerce sites, then, of course, having ratings on those individual sites would be an option. The data in the page usability page of Search Console of our site is gone and has become no pages of your site are sufficiently user-friendly. Though the percentage of red, yellow, green zones is similar to the rest of our projects. Let's see. Not really sure what exactly you're seeing there, but I think you're up next anyway. So maybe maybe you can elaborate a bit on what exactly you're seeing there, Alexi. Oh, no. OK. Looks like, there you are.
Oh, sorry. Hello. My English is very, very bad, and I'm not very fast. We have 7 our projects. It is a big projects. It's magazine, internet magazine, and in one of our projects, I see that on page experience we have 1 day 20,000 good pages, but yesterday I see that good page is 1,000, but on the next week I don't see statistics about last week. I see another picture every week. Every week I see another picture and another data. And
OK. Do you see bad pages going up when the good pages go down, or is it just the overall number goes down?
No data.
OK. So I think what is happening is you're seeing an effect of the way that we track this data in Search Console, and it sounds very confusing. It's probably confusing. So essentially, what we do with regards to the core web vitals and the speed in general, we track the data based on what we see from users. A specific kind of user, I think that's documented in the Chrome side. And only when we have sufficient data from users will we be able to use that in Search Console. And additionally, in Search Console, we create groups of pages where we think this set of pages is the same. And if we have enough data for this set of pages, then we will use that. That also means that if you have just barely enough data for that set of pages, then you could see the situation where sometimes we have enough data, and then we show it. And that's the kind of the good pages that you see there. And sometimes we don't have enough data, and then we say, well, we don't have any good pages, or not as many good pages as before. And you see that kind of drop again. And that essentially doesn't mean that your website is bad. It basically just means we don't have enough data to tell. So if you see that just the overall number goes down, and over time the overall number goes back up again, then probably you almost have enough data for us to use for that. If you see the good number go down and the bad number go up, then that's a sign that there's a problem that we see there. So if just the overall number goes down, I would ignore it. I think that's perfectly fine.
We have 7 projects, and it is our biggest project. Small projects have good data. All our projects on the same platform. It's our platform, and it is the same for our our projects. But in one project we see data, but on the biggest project we couldn't see data.
That sounds confusing, but it can still be the case, depending on the kinds of users that are going to these pages, because we don't take the data from all kinds of users. And the aggregation on the group of pages is kind of, I don't know, sometimes unclear. So it can happen that you see that even on a larger website. So I would not assume offhand that this is a bad sign. It would be bad if the number of bad pages were to go up. But if you're just seeing less data from time to time, even if that's on a weekly cycle, I don't think that's a problem.
In this biggest project, we have a second part of our questions about covered page in Search Console. On the biggest project, we see that primary robot is PC, not smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why?
It just is.
I duplicate my question in chat text.
OK, yeah, it just is. So for some sites, we are still crawling with the desktop Googlebot, and it's something where we're currently working through a bigger set of sites to switch them over to mobile indexing. And once we have all of that covered, we will switch and start working on the smaller sites again to switch them to mobile indexing. So it just is. It's not something that you can kind of force the other way around. But it also doesn't affect any of the indexing or crawling or ranking side of things. It's just we're indexing it with a desktop crawler still.
OK, thank you.
Sure. All right. Maybe let me see. I'll just grab the next 2 questions, and then we'll switch to more live questions because more people are still here. I also have a bit of time afterwards where we can talk about things more. Let's see. Will Google simulate users to crawl and check pages to check if a page can normally place an order? I don't think we do this from a web search point of view. I do think we sometimes do this for product search, though. So specifically for product search, I could imagine that we do this. Similar how we do it for ads, where we check the ads landing page quality, those kind of things. How does Google determine out-of-stock page? Will Google take actions on the out-of-stock page, for example, crawl less and lower the rankings? structured data has been deleted, so it won't display out of stock in the search results. We do try to understand when a page is no longer relevant based on the content of the page. So in particular, the common example is a soft 404 page where you serve us a page that looks like it could be a normal page, but it's essentially an error page that says this page no longer exists. And we do try to pick up things like that for e-commerce as well. So that's something where you might see that out-of-stock products are seen as soft 404 pages. When they're seen as soft 404 pages, we drop them completely from search. If we keep the page indexed despite being out of stock, we will not change the ranking. It'll be ranked essentially normally still. It's also still ranked normally if you change the structured data and say that something is out of stock. So from that point of view, it's not that the page would drop in ranking. It's more that either it's seen as a soft 404 page or it's not. If it's not seen as a soft 404 page, it's still a normal page. All right, and then I guess a complicated question about handshake domains. So I had to look this up. I think, Damien, you're here as well? Somewhere?
Yep.
Yes. OK. Can you explain a bit more what handshake domains are and what is happening?
Sure. I guess the question in what I'm trying to look for is, I guess the best way is I'll give you the example of how I went about it. I had three, I guess you'd say, of the handshake domain. Basically, Handshake is set across for it being decentralized platform. The way the files rest on the platform is scattered across, let's just say, for time's sake, a few FTP servers. With that known, I put a HTML file for test on 3 different of these, let's just say, servers, that being the 3 different companies. And I noticed that the indexing of that file, HTML file, varied drastically between, one actually indexed probably within 2 to 3 weeks. Another one, it was maybe about a few days, actually fairly quick. And then the third final test, it was probably about about like almost 20 days before it even got any light of search, showing. I know it's a little tricky question here, and it's a little out of the realms of normal search. So that's why I was kind of curious.
Yeah. So I think the aspect of indexing across different domains, that's kind of normal and to be expected, in the sense that we try to understand kind of the overall context of a domain or of a website. Sure. And try to figure out, like, where does it make sense for us to invest our resources. And that can mean if we don't know much about a domain, maybe it'll take a little bit longer for us to start crawling and indexing stuff there. Whereas if we already know that this is like a really great website, then we'll probably crawl and index a lot faster. So that's, I think, kind of the aspect that you're seeing there. I think. OK. Yeah, I think the other part with the handshake domains, I took a quick, like I don't know, 5-minute look at what it was. So from what I can tell, it's basically kind of like an alternate DNS system.
Confirmed, yes.
Which is kind of based on blockchain technology. Yes. And usually what happens there is on our side, our systems are essentially tuned to using kind of, I don't know, the traditional DNS system, for the most part, works fairly well. So that's kind of what we would focus on there. However, we do have, let's say, an open mind in general at Google, and lots of people are playing around with all of the new technologies around blockchain as well. So I wouldn't say that will never shift, but it's probably not something that's going to happen very quickly. And it's I think similar to the onion domains. I don't know if you remember those. It's kind of like also an alternate DNS system. And that's something where I think in the end we never index the onion domains directly. But if over time we recognize that this is something that is very popular, that people are using this actually to host their content and make it accessible, then I could understand that our systems would be like, well, we have to figure out a way to deal with this and to index this content as well. Because if people are searching for information and that information is only findable through this way, then maybe we have to find a way to make that accessible.
Confirm.
So from that point of view, if you need something short-term to work well in search, I would use a traditional DNS setup. If you kind of want to kind of grow this, I don't know, alternate setup, then I think that's worthwhile trying out and kind of like keeping as more like, I'd say like a side project or something to kind of, I don't know, try things out. And it could also be that there's some kind of a middle ground there in that since these are also still IP addresses that are hosted on the internet normally, maybe there is a way for kind of like almost like a gateway setup to help out there so that we can still kind of crawl one set of URLs that lead to the final content.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Let's see, Konstantinos.
Hi, John.
Hi.
We have an issue with one of our sites. It shows good on search. It has a good rank for keywords it writes content for. It shows up on Discover. We get a lot of traffic there. We have no Core Web Vital issues. The page experience is over 99.5%. However, we show up on News Google on mobile version. However, our site does not show up on News Google desktop version, and it does not show up on top stories. What could it be? We believe, good structured data on our site.
Yeah.
Could it be something from our site, maybe?
I don't know. So it's especially the news side. I don't know if they do something specific there. What I would recommend doing is using the contact form in the Help Center to reach out to someone from the news team.
From the news team, OK.
Yeah. Because especially if you're saying it's like visible in parts of Google News and not visible in other parts, then maybe there is something that you can do on your side to make it clear that actually it's relevant for both parts. Maybe there's also some setting on our side with regards to Google News that like someone can kind of nudge the algorithm in the right way to make sure that it gets picked up. But I don't know the details of Google News, so it's really hard for me to say what you should be doing there.
OK, thank you very much.
Cool. Mark.
Hi, good morning. I just wanted to...
Oh, no, you're muted again.
OK, am I
Go
back?
for it. Yes.
Oh, great, super. I just wanted to come back to something you explained earlier. It was about these 5-star ratings about your own company on your own website. I mean, I see Google's point saying that it'll be quite senseless to have that in the form of, OK, I have a 5-star out of 5-star rating. However, it's pretty common in the business context that you ask your customers to kind of give you feedback if they're happy with the service you provide. And it'll be also some additional value for people searching on the internet if they were able to find these recommendations. So is there a way, kind of in a Google sense, legal way or helpful way, that we ask our customers to rate our service and to display that to new customers? So, okay, we've been, I don't know, 4.6 stars out of 5. Would Trustpilot or something be an alternative that we could somehow play out in the search results?
So you can definitely put these on your homepage. We would see these more as testimonials because you're kind of like picking and choosing what you want to show. Using structured data for that on your own website is something that we wouldn't like to see. We would probably ignore that. But sending users to a third-party review site where they can review it, I think is kind of the best approach there. Because what would happen then is if we show that listing from that third-party review site, we can show the structured data for your business there. So if that's, I don't know, for example, you're listing on Yelp and they leave the reviews there. When that Yelp listing is shown in search, we will know, like, well, this is a list of businesses, essentially, so we can show the structured data about the business, and then we can use that review markup and show those stars in the search results. So I don't know if Yelp has structured data, but if they do have this structured data, then that's something that we could pick up there. Showing it on your website as well, kind of in a textual form, is perfectly fine. And testimonials are super common and super popular. But it's just that we wouldn't show the stars in the search results for that. So if someone searches for, I don't know, some company and SEO, and you have a testimonial from that company on your SEO business, then we can still show that as normal kind of text on a page that we found on the web.
Okay, so there's actually no way to link the search results about us and the star rating about us. It's on the search result page.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think for some kinds of knowledge graph entries that we show for individual businesses, sometimes we link essentially different profiles where you have essentially more information about that one entity. I don't know how that works with regards to companies, if that's something that we also do there. But that might be something worth trying out to see, like, how are other companies being shown in that regard? Is it just the Google My Business? What is it? Google Profiles? What is it? Business Profiles. All these names. If it's just the business profile being shown, or if it's more like a knowledge graph entry where we have more information about that business being shown. And probably for businesses that are more online and not based on a physical location, probably it's more about that knowledge graph entry where we do try to pull out information from different sources.
OK, thank you.
Cool. OK, let me take a break here with the recording. I'll get back to the other people that have raised hands and more questions as well over time. If you're watching this on YouTube, thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you'd like to join some of these at some point in the future, feel free to watch out for the entries in the community section where we post the link and kind of pre-announce them. Yeah. And for all of you that submitted questions, all of you that came here, thanks for dropping by. Thanks for all of the interesting questions. And hopefully we'll see each other in one of the future ones again.